Hello, happy Friday! Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Alyssa Thomas from Penguin and Fish, where we make lovely and quirky hand embroidery kits, and I am here every weeknight at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. And it's a time where we can relax and craft for about an hour, and we work on projects from beginning to end. And tonight is special because it is the first Friday of the month. Which means it's Finish It Friday. So every first Friday of the month, we stop whatever project we're working on and we get something that's unfinished and we work on that for the hour instead. And since we've been doing it, this is maybe the fourth or fifth Finish It Friday that we've done, but I feel like I'm getting so much further ahead in my projects. It's kind of crazy, just that one little hour a month, and things are getting done. So I'm excited about that. So tonight I'm going to start the tag, or not the tag, the label for my Splendid Sampler quilt. So last Finish It Friday, we worked on the binding and, well, we worked on the quilting, and then I just kept going till I got all the way through the binding. So the quilt is actually done at this point. We just need to make a label. And we talked about it over the past few nights, what we should have on there and stuff, and I think I have it down. I'm definitely not going to finish it tonight, but I have kind of a goofy idea for it, and I want to show you guys that and then tell you kind of my plan for it, and we'll get started on it tonight as well. So without further ado, I'm going to flip you around and we'll get going. Let me know how your Friday is going. All right, guys, here we go. Okay, here is my quilt. Hold on a sec, you guys. I forgot to put my mic on for you. Okay, so here is my thinking. So here's the quilt. This is the back of the quilt. I am done with all of the binding. I still have to go around and like snip threads and stuff, but here we go. There's the binding. So this is the back. And when I trimmed this, we got a whole pile of little edge trimmings. So what I think I might do with this, here's my idea. So I think I'm going to take this trimming and write all the stuff for my label in one long line. And then stitch this one long weird line of information onto the bottom of the quilt, onto the back of the quilt. So it'll kind of be like, you know, if we fold it over, it'll be just like this, you know, ½ inch worth of writing. So I thought that would be kind of silly. And, you know, look, it transitions into this fabric too, which I think is kind of funny. So I think that's my plan. So there's a way that I'm planning on doing this that I think will make it kind of easy to attach it. So what I'm going to do is, well, first, here I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you guys. First, I'm going to write all the information on here, and I'm just going to write it right on. I'm not going to trace it or anything like that. So I have my sew line pen here. Well, it's not a pen. It's that like little crayon white chalky deal. So I'm gonna just write directly on my fabric. I think I'm gonna put my name, the start day, the end day, the location, so Minneapolis, Minnesota, and then I thought I'd put like, this is the silly part, I'd put the YouTube channel and the project in the YouTube channel where you can find all the videos for when I made the Splendid Sampler quilt. So it's almost like, if you want to find the diary of the quilt, here you go. I thought it'd be kind of a silly, goofy thing to put on a quilt label. So this is all the information. It's a lot, but I think it's kind of fun. So it's going to take longer, this label, than I thought, but now I'm hooked to it. I'm committed to this idea now. So I'm going to write that on here. Just like one long row forever until it's written. But what I'm going to do when I'm done stitching it, so I have my embroidery hoop, I'm going to stretch it in between the hoop here like this and just stitch. We'll see how that goes. I don't usually like stitching onto fabric where I don't have all of the fabric in there, but we're going to give it a go. But when I'm done, I'm going to use this fusible from Pellon, this fusible sheer weight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get pieces of this, and I'm going to sew. I'm going to take, hopefully this makes sense, and I'll do this stuff. I'm not going to get to this part tonight, but when I do, I'll show you guys what I mean, because I think it's going to be kind of neat. So once I get this far, so let's say I have this whole thing stitched. This has one side that has the little glue dots on, and then one side that's got nothing. It's just like fabric. So what I'm going to do is once I'm done stitching, I'm going to put the right side of the fabric against the glue side. And, you know, it's only this wide, so I'll have to put like I'll have to cut strips of these. But then I'm going to sew, you know, this has a rough edge, but I'm going to sew like a 1/4 inch from my embroidery. And then, you know, trim it all nice after that. But then what I should be able to do, so these will be sewn together, I should be able to cut down just through this fusible, turn the whole thing right side out, which means I'll have nice finished edges. You know, my edges will be nice and finished like this. And then the fusible dots will be on the outside instead of on the inside, and I should just be able to fuse it down to the quilt. So, you know, so the fusible dots will be on that side. I can just place it and fuse the dots onto there. And then, you know, I could just stitch, I'll stitch around the whole thing too, like I did with the binding too. But don't you think it'd be easy to write on the fabric with the Pellon stuff on it to make it stiffer? I didn't really want, I could do that, but like the whole point of using this is that I have a finished edge afterwards. Like it's not like the fusible that we do the fusible applique with. It's lighter like fabric, so I can actually turn something right side out when I'm done, so I got like that nice edge afterwards. It's something that people do this for applique circles often, so they'll cut a circle with a 1/4 inch seam, like 1/4 inch bigger than they want, and then they'll cut a circle of this, sew all the way around, and then you cut just a little bit from this, turn it right side out, and then you can glue it right down. You can fuse it right down, and then you just stitch a little edge. That's kind of the same premise that I think I'm going to do with this. So it's a little experiment. I think it'll work. It'll be a little extra time, but I think it'll be kind of fun. So that is the plan. So, all right, let's see, we'll start on this side because then I can make sure to get some of this goofy fabric in. So I'm gonna just try and write right in the middle. Yeah, it's gonna be like a long tube. You're gonna use that ironing like a long tube. Well, I'm gonna cut along the inside of that fusible. So I could do it like a long tube, but I think it might be easier to just cut the long way because this doesn't have to be perfect afterwards. This can have a big cut through it. I just need some of these glue dots. I don't even need all of the glue dots. I need some of these glue dots to stick down. And then the whole thing will float above the surface too, like we did needle turn applique, where the applique just kind of floats and is attached to the edge. It's going to have that same feel, different than the fusible applique. You know, this is probably a little confusing, but I think it'll all make sense. It'll be a little goofy, but I think it'll all make sense once you see it come together, and hopefully it works. Yeah, it's a little quirky, Nolene, for sure. But I think it'll be kind of fun. So I'm going to start with just writing directly on here. So I'm writing on the right side of it. Here's my little list here. So I'm going to just try and write right in the middle. Hopefully it works. I do want to embroider this, so I do need to stitch. I do need the letters big enough so they're kind of easy to stitch, but we'll just see. I'm going to start. I'm going to start kind of here because I need enough fabric so it can go in the hoop. So let's just go here. All right, so what's nice, these sew line pencils with the white in it, I mean, they're going to really show up well here. So however this ends up is how it's going to end up. And I can adjust a little bit as I go. I always like 2 capital A's. I'm trying to write it like my handwriting, but it's kind of hard to, a little hard to write on this fabric as it moves around. I could tape it down, but I'm not going to get all into that. Okay, so start. So this is going to be a huge embroidery project. So I'm just making this whole project take longer and longer, but that's okay. You wouldn't mark the whole thing at once, or it will rub off. Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna just hope it's gonna be okay, and I'll just write over it again if it gets too bad. So again, I'm trying to make it a little bit like my handwriting, but it's gonna be just goofy. So we started this in February 2016. I'm not putting the exact date just because I don't know the exact date when I will get this done, but hopefully it will still be June. Oh yeah, I haven't, that sandpaper idea. Yeah, so I've heard of that, but I haven't tried that before. So there's these, you can put sandpaper down, or there's these sandpaper like pads that you can get, and in theory it makes it easier to write on so this doesn't move around. Patricia, I'm gonna have to give that a go in the future. See, all these like fun, in my brain, like fun things that I wanna try and do, like this goofy thing, stitching out of here. There's always some way to make it easier. Someone's already figured out a world to make it easier. Some gadget. To June. So this is a lot of stitching, especially once I get to the web address, but oh well. I'm gonna like it. Took a long time, might as well finish it off right. Oh, the label's so worth the extra time. I hope so. Oh, just a normal, just sandpaper from Home Depot, cheap. That's, I might have to dig some of that up next time I do this. All right. I'm kind of abbreviating, but I think that's kind of fun too. MPLS. I'm calling that for Minneapolis. Minneapolis. MN. And then I have the web address. You know what? Maybe I will wait for the web address because it's going to be on this funny fabric here. So yeah, so maybe I'll start stitching here, and then once I get that far, then I'll write this next bit on, because that's going to be annoying to write again. So all right, let's start stitching this. It's going to be so goofy. So we're going to lose like quite a bit of seam allowance with this. So ultimately, it's going to end up just like this kind of tape almost. I think it'll be fun. It's going to be weird, but I like it. So all right, we're going to start stitching it. I've been storing, remember I made this little pack. This is from So Sweetness, her Kismet trinket pouch. I think that's what it was called, but this is the large version of that, and I made one of those out of recycled jeans. But I've been storing just random floss, like dead floss in it. So I think I'm going to stitch this all in white. These are like just floss for our kits that were the wrong length, or we didn't have enough of the color or something. And just like my other little scrappy flosses, I just decided to start throwing them in here. So I saw that I had some white, and that's what I'm gonna stitch with. So I'm just grabbing a pile of white from here. Ooh, you know what? I even have an embroidered needle stuck up in here. So let's get that out. I think I have my little blue storky over here yet. All right, let's get this guy in the hoop. So like I said, I don't usually like stitching like this where not the whole piece is surrounded, but we're gonna just give it a go. It'll go fast enough, so I'm not too worried. And you know, it's just my own handwriting, so we can always adjust as needed. Oh, yeah, freezer paper on the back, that'd be a good idea. Freezer paper doesn't go in the hoop very well, and I kind of wanted to use a hoop. But yeah, maybe since I don't think I'll get this all, well, I know for a fact I will not get this all done tonight, so maybe the next round we can try with freezer paper. I'm going to do the 3 strands. So I'm just going to pull out 3 strands here. 1, 2. I think it'll be fun though, this goofy little stretch of a label on the back. So it'll be neat. Woo! Joanne's had a 65% off coupon, so you got some variegated thread. Fun! Is that for the quilting? Doing the variegated quilting? That'll be kind of neat. I think that's just like a really fun look. All right. Here we are. Okay, so I usually start with an away knot, and I think I will still do that, even though it'll be a little awkward. But I like not having a knot. I like tucking it in. Okay, so let's just, I'm gonna actually throw it here, and then all my stitching will go over it, which will just help hold it in place. So, all right, we're just gonna start going here and see how this goes. I haven't stitched text like this in a while, so this will be kind of fun. So I'm trying not to pull too hard on the thread because it isn't, you know, it's not in here all that tightly. You know, I'm kind of noticing now that it's pulling my little seams apart a little bit, but we're just going to deal with however this ends up. Ultimately, I am going to be hand stitching this down, kind of like how you hand stitch down a binding. So after we go through the whole process of turning it right side out with that fusible and fusing it down, that's not the only thing that's going to hold it. I am going to stitch it down. But so it's kind of like needle turn applique, where I do the needle turn beforehand almost. That's what the effect of it is going to be. Ooh, the hedgehog kit's coming for you this week. Yay, Connie, that's awesome. Good, so they're sending the mass drop stuff pretty quickly then, it sounds like. Good, good, good. I probably couldn't have, like I'm making the most work out of this label as I can, which is just so silly. I could have just written with like a permanent marker on the back of the quilt and been done, but you know, of course I got to make it a little bit more difficult. Oh, so you got the Home Depot sandpaper is 150 grit, not too sandy for under the fabric. Oh, okay, so 150 grit. We may be headed there, or Menards this weekend. You know what? I wonder if we have some of that too. I will have to take a look. Yeah, because then we can do that for when I write. We can give that a go when I write the big old web address down. Which I just think it's kind of funny. But I like the idea of that the web address is there because you know, it is the diary of the quilt, really, right? All the little live videos. So I'm just doing this whole thing in backstitch. I think it's just a nice outlining stitch that I can control really well. Like I can, you know, I'm going around some curvy areas here. So I'm making my stitches a little bit smaller so I can make sure that it gets the curve effect to it. And that's pretty easy to do with a back stitch. The sandpaper will, when I write on here, my problem when I was writing this was that the fabric was kind of shimmying around when I was writing on it. The sandpaper kind of holds, I have not done it yet, but the premise is that the sandpaper holds the fabric in place so it doesn't shimmy around when you're when you're tracing to it or when you're writing on it. And it's typically used in applique for like tracing appliques a lot. I think that's the intended use, right? Is mostly for appliques. Yeah, my own time capsule info for the quilt. Exactly. So I think it is going to be good that I didn't write the whole thing like you suggested, because it is already just from the thread brushing by it and my hand brushing by it, it is already kind of coming off. That's why I don't always like using those pencils for transferring a design, because, or like, you know, I don't like using the air erase. There's some transfer markers where you can trace through and it'll just, it'll go away after it dries. You know, like, so like an hour or something, it'll go away. But that's always not enough time for me, so I get scared about using those markers, the air erase markers, and actually these chalk pencils like this too. That's why I like the water soluble marker a little bit better, because that stays until you get rid of it. I kind of feel like a little kid wrote this, but that's okay. I like it. So I could have just tried to stitch this directly to the quilt, and in the end, that's probably would have been easier. But man, maybe I should have done that. But I like the idea that doing it this way, I can embroider it normally. If I embroidered directly onto the quilt, I would have to stay in that top layer, and I don't enjoy embroidering that way as much. Oops, got a little knot in here. So then I thought, oh, I do it this long strip way. And I had just these scraps were laying around still. I'm like, ooh, I could use the scraps even more. But yeah, maybe I should have just stitched directly to the quilt, but whatever. We're in it now. All right, after this first word, I am going to move everything over a little bit though, because it is getting kind of loose and bubbly in the middle. The pigment pens are fine, so for like tracing a design. So the only thing with the Pigma pens is that they're permanent. So it's perfectly fine. They have a nice, if you get a fine tip, they have really good fine tips on them. I am going to scooch this down. But they are permanent, which is fine with embroidery because you're stitching over them. And that's how an iron-on transfer would be too. They'd be permanent. I'm wondering if I should. I think I'm gonna get rid of this. I forgot about my away knot. Ooh, wow, cut funny. I'm gonna just tuck this in while I'm here. Let's try and pull it all the way back here. While it's out of the hoop here. Just because I didn't think of it, I should have done it before I took the hoop out. But yeah, so they would be permanent, the Pigma pens, as far as I know. And that's what a lot of people do for labels. They just write with the Pigma pen and that's it. That's perfectly fine. That was my plan number one until I let the brain start going and I was thinking about all this other stuff, and now I've got stuck in a whole nother project, right? The friction pens, so in theory, Connie, those work fabulously. With the friction pens, you write on, and then they kind of disappear in the heat of an iron. However, they come back and they leave a really weird residue, and on some fabrics they stain the fabrics, and I don't know how safe they are over time. So I used to really like them because they go on to fabric really easily and they come off kind of magically, but you can see a residue, like it actually fills in the holes of the fabric. Like if you look really close, you'll be able to see that it fills in the weave of the fabric. and that does not come out. So you're not actually getting rid of the ink, you're getting rid of the pigment, but it never actually really goes away. I've stopped using them, although it's way too bad, because if it really kind of disappeared, they would be amazing, because they write really easily on. So, you know, if it worked, you know, if I knew that it wasn't gonna hurt the fabric or anything like that, then it'd be a better deal. But I just don't know, so I don't use them anymore. Oh, your friends did not go away. Yeah, I remember when I mentioned them in my book. So they had just come out when I did my book, and I really liked them. But then more and more stuff was coming up about it. And when I was doing the book, like I was like, ooh, these pens are going to be great because you can just sketch. Like you can just sketch a whole design on it and only stitch what you want of the sketch, and then you can delete the sketch basically and just leave behind the nice finished drawing. That's what I had in my head of like why they would be awesome. But when I did that with one of the projects, you could definitely see all of the residue stuck in the weave of the fabric of the pens. So that I didn't like at all, because you could basically see all your marks. So they didn't actually really go away. And so I don't know, since then, and you know, there's been some controversy about it not coming out and not being safe for the fabric over time and stuff. So I've stopped using them, which is a pity because they really do go on easy. It would be a magic solution. By the time you get to the label, I just want to get it done quick so the label's complete. Yeah, Debbie, I usually don't do a label for that same reason. Like my brain's usually, you know, onto something else, you know. But you guys convinced me, and you're right. I need to make more of an effort doing this in my projects, especially for big projects that, you know, we spend time with and you know, are important to me, like this one and the Charming Chevrons one. We'll have to do one too. We're like making like our own ribbon tape here almost. So once I'm done with this name, I will, I think I'll need a new thread, but I'll move it around again. Actually, if I can get a few letters out of here, I'll jump and then start stitching there, because then the next thread I can weave in behind the stitches to start my next thread. So some of these I could make maybe a little bit more detailed, like I could maybe make my curves a little bit smaller, but this is pretty small type, so I am just trying to kind of estimate what will give the effect of these letters. You know, I still want them to look like my letters, you know, because it's my handwriting. So I am trying to do it the best as I can, but you know, you're stitching with tiny straight lines, so you're not going to get every perfect curve. But you know, like this A, I want to make sure that it looks a little bit like a curve and not like a box or something. So I'm going to put a couple extra stitches just so I can get the effect of a curve. And same with the S. And I had to do the same with this O, like the stitches are really small there. I'd still like to do, we've talked about potentially doing the stitched recipes. Like if you have an old like recipe from your mom or a grandparent or something, we talked about stitching those up. So stitching like someone's handwriting. And I'd like to do that project still. I think that'd be kind of fun. Ooh, that's not quite connected to the A. You know what? Maybe it's just because it's late, but I'm going to take that stitch out and kind of try and connect it to the A a little bit more. You know, because if it's not connected to the A, it's not going to look like the same letter. So I'm just going to I'm going to make that into 2 stitches. Actually, that's probably nice like that. We'll just leave it like that. Still looks like my handwriting, I think. Oh, yeah, you need to start labeling all quilts, not just the ones that you give to others. Yeah. Yeah, I need to start doing that too. My mom started, well, I think she's pretty good at labeling everything, but she, on top of that, has started a Pinterest, like a private Pinterest board. So just, I think only she can see it, and I think I can see it too. But she started just going around the house and taking photos of all the things that she's made, and she's uploaded, I think it's called like Things I've Made, you know? And then now she has like a photo record of it, and she's just surprised, you know, just to see it all in one place. It's kind of, you don't realize how much you do until it's all in one place like that. Spoonflower has a way where you get a recipe scanned and printed out on a T-towel. Oh yeah, so Spoonflower is an online printer. And yeah, if you were having trouble transferring a design or something, you could print like a recipe, like if you're wanting to stitch your mom's recipe or something like that. You could take a photo of it, really, and you probably need to know a little editing of the photo. Sometimes you can do that in camera just so that the type looks really nice and there's no like background and stuff. And then you can just print it out at Spoonflower. So print like your own fabric, like print a fat quarter, and then you can stitch right on top of that too as an option. I think what I would do is, first of all, my plan for when I do that, I actually might try and stitch it really big, like with yarn. A recipe, I think that'd be kind of cool, and like frame it like a big art piece. But what you could do is just photocopy the recipe. I would blow it up a little bit, because if it's small handwriting, that's going to be a little more difficult. So if you like blow up a recipe like 200% on a photocopier, and then photocopy it to some of the sulky stick and stitch, that's what I would do. And then you just stick that whole thing on, and then stitch the recipe on. I think when we do that project sometime, that's what I think I'm going to do for that. I'm just going to stitch till this thread's done. I'm in the middle here now, and it's going fine. So I'll stitch till this thread's done, weave in the back, and then we'll shimmy everything along. Oh, you hate making labels because you write so much information on them. Yeah, that might be a good reason to do it through Spoonflower. You could, through Spoonflower, they have 8-inch swatches that you can buy, so you don't have to get yardage and yardage at Spoonflower. You could just get an 8-inch by 8-inch swatch. It's probably like, I don't know, $6 or something. I don't quite remember, but you could just type out your information or design it on the computer, your label, and then go to spoonflower.com and upload the file, and then get an 8-inch by 8-inch swatch of it, and then just stitch that on. That's actually how the labels for the Splendid Sampler were made. Remember, we had those labels that they mentioned where it has every designer's name and the name of their piece, their square, and all that was on it. Those you could order from Spoonflower. So that's just all pre-printed. And you can do that for yourself. All right, we're almost done with this thread. Going through the seam here now. There's some that we got like a bunch of weird seams because this is a trimming from the back of the quilt, and the back was like all Frankensteined together. All right, I think that's all I can do here. I'm gonna have to weave in the end. So let's flip that around. Weave back and forth 3 times. Oh yeah, you can do that. I have not tried that before, Lucy. You can print labels on fabric through your printer. So, how do you do that again? Do you like I've heard it done where you can just cut a piece of paper to the same size or a little bit smaller than, you know, your 8.5 by 11 paper, and you can tape it to there, or you can do it with freezer paper and then run it through your printer and print directly on. I think you gotta put some sort of medium on, like an acrylic medium or something to hold it there, or so the ink doesn't like go away. Your brother does embroidery letters. Oh, that's cool. So I do have like a cheap embroidery machine, so embroidery sewing machine, and I do baby labels on there. So we'll stitch like, I have like one of my characters, like a little bunny or something from the Picnic Pals embroidery pattern. I did that. I changed it into a machine pattern, and I stitched that, or like a turtle, or one of my other designs. I've digitized a couple of them, and I put that next to their name and that. So sometimes I'll make, or my mom will request, hey, I need a baby label with a bunny or a, you know, a lion or something with this name and the weight and the what day they were born and whatever, and then I'll embroider that on the embroidery machine, and then my mom will stitch it to a quilt. All right, so I'm gonna just weave in the end here again. I'm a little close to the edge, but I think we can do it still. Should have done this early. It's a little difficult when you're this close to the edge of the fabric. Or the edge of the hoop, I mean. Okay. We're fine. I'm going to trim. Oh, I just stabbed myself. That always happens. Okay. Where are we at? So we got Alyssa Thomas star right now. Let's finish that. So it's start. I had to look up for sure when we started this project. I knew it was on Valentine's Day, but I think it was 2016 that we started this. So 2016, so it's about, you know, a year or 2.5 years in the making, which really for some of my projects is not too bad. Like I said, I got that jean quilt that's like a decade in the making. All right, I'm gonna make these little French knots. I like French knots. All right, and one more. It's a little harder for me to embroider. I don't know if you guys can tell, but when oh yeah, you guys, it's going for you guys. So I need to like aim. I need to aim the type at the light so I can see it, because if I'm up like this, then the light shines through and I can't. All I see is the weave of the fabric. So I just wrote Feb. I figured I was picking colors and stuff before Valentine's Day when we started this, so I just wrote a blanket February, not just the 14th. And again, because I didn't know when I was going to complete this. Hopefully sometime in June still. I'm kind of hoping to maybe just continue this for the next few days, next week a little bit. That's the thing with these Finish It Fridays. You know, I'm breaking out these projects that are not done with the intention of just getting an hour further on them, but it's been jump-starting me getting them finished, which is awesome. That's like exactly what I want to have happen when I break out a project that I haven't worked on in a while, you know? I want to just be like, you know what? I'm just going to get this guy done. And that's what's been happening so far. So far with these. We just take a couple extra days, or I keep them out and I finish them on my own, and they are getting done. So that makes me feel good. Like, it makes me think like, man, I'm going to get this jean quilt done one of these days. So that might be the next Finish It Friday. Sure, I have some little projects too hiding around. Ooh, I started to pick my Splendid Sampler 2 fabrics today. So I think I'm going to try and do a video on it. I don't know if I'll get to it. Yeah, so close to being done on this for sure. Yeah, I want to get this done for sure before we start the second Splendid Sampler, because that's going to be mid-June when that starts. Oh, you love the jean quilt? Yay, that's awesome. Thanks, Noeline. But yeah, so I started picking my fabrics, and I forget who here was going to do their Splendid Sampler with, like, neutrals. I just really like that idea. So I think I'm going to do some neutrals, too. So I got my fat quarter bin out, and I'm happy to say that it's feeling lighter. Like, I'm in the use up all the stuff mode, and just that my bins of fat quarters are feeling smaller and smaller and lighter is making me happy. So it was fun picking out the fat quarters. So I think I'm gonna do kind of neutrals, just because that's like way not what I've been doing as of late. You know what I mean? Like, I have all these crazy bright quilts. The I Love Home wasn't necessarily super bright, but it wasn't really neutral. By neutrals, Gretchen, I mean kind of like whites and tans. And I also think, yeah, not bright. And I also think I'm going to have it err on the side of them all being a little lighter in color. So a little lighter in value. So I think, you know, but then I was looking at some of little art pieces that we have around the house, and a few of those are kind of neutral, but with like a little pop of color. So I'm doing like these kind of warm neutrals. So it's actually kind of a lot of light yellows, because that's what I have. So I think I'm going to do a white base, which I've never actually, I know that's a really common thing to do, but I've never actually done it. So I'm going to do white for the backgrounds, or for the bulk of each block. So like, you know, a lot of people do that they do like white for the background, and then they're, yeah, a white to brown paper bag. That's a good way of saying it, Kathy. A white to brown paper bag is kind of a neutral. And really, it all kind of depends on what's next to it. Like, if you have a bright pink, then anything is going to look neutral next to a bright pink, right? But I think I'm going to do a white background, and then kind of some very pale yellow to tan to cream neutrals. And then I have a couple that get a little darker. And then I have a few little pops of color, like a little like coral pink in there and a little teal kind of blue. And I'm thinking that I use those rarely, like every 5 blocks or something, I'll put like a teeny tish of that in. So overall, what I want the quilt to feel like, I'm always thinking about what the overall quilt is gonna be. So I'm thinking it's gonna be kind of this whites and like light yellows with like these teeny pops barely here and there of these other colors. My fear is though that once I start stitching, or once I start sewing, I'm going to actually use those colors a whole lot more, those bright colors. So it's going to end up not feeling like super neutral. It's going to feel like neutrals with these bright colors because I feel like I'm going to get too gung-ho on using those bright colors when I just want them to be teeny bits. So I had a lot more of those in, and I took a ton of them out of my stack just to discourage me from using it, or that I'm physically limited with the amount of fabric of those. So I hopefully don't go overboard. I just want them to be like little speckles, almost like confetti bits of these other colors, but within this kind of neutral palette. So I think that'll be kind of a different palette for me. I think it'd be a good challenge for me, and I get to use up more fabric from my bin. And just the idea of that white background, and then your, whatever is happening in the block is the patterned fabric on a white background. I've never done that before. Which, like I said, that's a pretty common thing to do, but I thought it'd be maybe a good rest. Yeah, slight splashes of color. I thought this whole, though, neutral thing would be a good exercise for me, for sure, just because I've been doing all these kind of super bright, saturated quilts lately, and like, you know what? I need to tone that down. I need to try something else. But I still want it to feel like modern and just like surprising. Like I still want like I want those specks of confetti to be little juicy surprises. So anyway, that's kind of my thought so far. And I think we're just going to finish up this 2016. I'm going to show you, I have the fabric out here. And since we're talking about it, I think I'll just give you guys a sneak peek of what I'm thinking. So I just kind of grabbed and, thought through it a little bit, but I think I'm going to kind of put together kind of a little bit of my thought process in the video. I don't know, we'll see. Now is the 40 fat quarter for the whole 100 blocks. Oh no, Bonnie, that's definitely for the whole 100 blocks. You absolutely for sure don't need 40 fat quarters for just the 20 blocks. It is for the full quilt. And I'm probably going to do the same thing that I've been doing with my other quilts. I'm going to use all my excess fabric for the back. And my guess is with those 40 fat quarters, I'm going to get pretty deep into the back too with just that fabric. So no, that's definitely for the whole quilt. I mean, if you're putting big borders or sashing, I mean, you might want extra for that, but nah, 40 fat quarters is going to get you there for sure. And actually, the last time, I think they only recommended like 30 to 35 fat quarters. I think they've kind of upped that a little bit just because maybe people found out that they needed a little bit more fabric or something. So no, that is absolutely for the whole quilt. Yeah, 40 fat quarters is a lot of fabric. I think you probably don't need that much. If you're going scrappy or, if you're buying a whole collection, then sometimes it comes with that much. Oh, you're halfway done, but you're still starting round 2. Nice. The second Splendid Sampler. But yeah, so if you're going more scrappy, kind of like what I'm doing, I'm just picking from my stash. I have a lot of fat quarters, just like, it's not organized by collection. It's not even organized by color. It's just all there, and I can just grab. If you're going that route and you're thinking 40 is too much and you don't want to take 40 out, then don't. Like, pick 30 And if you find that like, I need to add a few more reds, then go grab a couple more reds from your stash. But yeah, you don't need the 40 to start, for sure. I mean, you could start with 2 fat quarters, honestly. If you can develop it as you go, you know? If you have if you have a couple fat quarters or like 3 or 4 fat quarters that you just love how they go together, you know, start with those and then just continue to add from there. Google Bounty Hunter and neutrals. You've made 4 mystery quilts. Oh, and it's amazing how using diverse neutrals. I think I'll do that. I'll do that, Kathy. Yeah, because I don't do neutrals often at all. You were gonna do the Splendid Sampler one, but was too intimidated. Oh, so now so do this one. So you're gonna be starting with everyone else, and I think my videos will be a little bit better this time. So I think I'm gonna stop now. I still have thread on the needle, but it's getting kind of late here. So, and I want to show you my fabric. So I'm gonna just stick the needle in here. I am gonna take it out of the hoop, just so I can set it aside, and if I need the hoop, then I can use it. But here we go. So I did Alyssa Thomas start February 2016. So we still need to do the complete June 2018, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and then I'm going to continue. Like that's barely halfway done. I still want to write like the whole web address, and then the project, once you get to that web address, the project for this, if someone wanted to find it later. But yeah, so ultimately, these will be sewn. This will be like sewn under. Let's see if I can kind of fold it. There, so this will be like this, and then it'll have the glue dots on the back, and then we will I will press it onto the quilt somewhere, and then once it's pressed down, then I'll go around and I'll tack it down along the whole edge, and that's going to take a bunch of time too. It'll be like doing the binding. But it's goofy. I think it's going to be fun. So we're going to keep going with that. I'm just going to set that aside quick. But I wanted to show you my fabrics as of now. So I'm not saying that these won't change, but this is kind of what I picked out today. So I did find that I had a ton of white, which is great. So that's why I'm thinking, although I'm going to get you guys a little bit higher to do this though. This is why I'm thinking like all the backgrounds can be white, so that white base, which again is pretty common. And then I just kind of grabbed these, kind of all my neutrals, and all the neutrals kind of ended up being more of these yellowy ones, like those are kind of tan. But here, then like some pops of these. But let me just, I want to separate the colors. So here I want to show you kind of what the neutrals look like together first. You know, some more. So they can be divided into, you know, lights and a little darker. So like I called these maybe a little darker. These are pretty light. This one's maybe a little darker. So it's going to be really subtle shifts between lights and mediums and dark tones. Like some of these are a hair darker. But that's kind of what I want to try out. All right, so some neutrals, and then but then I want to put like some pops of color in. So I have just a little bit of these. I have like this fun teal. I don't know, the lighting's not very good for you guys. Let's see. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go like this quick. We're going to just turn on the table here so you guys can, so they're just lit up a little bit better because they're a little shadowy. So, all right, whites, some of these tans, and then like a pop of, oh, this kind of is some of this yellow still, but then I liked, maybe it has a pop of these kind of coral colors too. And these aren't fat quarters, like this is just like a tiny little piece that I have. So I don't have all fat quarters here. But there, so like some of these, they start blending together here, and this has that pretty blue in, so I thought maybe a pop of blue. So this is kind of what I'm thinking. It's awfully light and kind of sweet, but if you imagine it kind of without the pops of color, you know, so it's kind of, I want this to be the general feel of the quilt, and it'll be a lot of white. So like if we put more white over there, just to give you a sense of proportion, because I do want the backgrounds to all kind of be that white. So lots of white, neutrals, but then, you know, like if these little pops of color hop up into the quilt here and there, you know? So just to give a sense of like these colors popping up, I'm just gonna kind of scatter these throughout a little bit. But see, this is kind of how I figure out a quilt. I kind of imagine that this is the full quilt, and you know, then you get like these little itty bits in. And if I can have that effect, that's kind of what I'm going for. Let's just, there's a half square triangle flying out there. So if my quilt can be these neutrals, but then all of a sudden, geez, that's a bold blue in there popping somewhere, you know, and like, look at this little sliver of blue somewhere within the white. So that's what I'm thinking. So overall, neutral. Like I want your initial reaction to be neutral, and then you discover like these little confetti bits of color. So I think that is my plan. Makes the neutrals pop, exactly. But I want the story to be about kind of these warm neutrals. But yeah, yes, you know, that's true. So watch this. I like that. That's a great way of saying it, Bonnie. Having the contrast of these make the neutrals pop. It makes the neutrals more important, right? Because watch this. So if I take all of these out all of a sudden, you know, this is all color theory stuff. If I take all of these out, you know, let's even take this guy out, you know. Now we're just neutrals again, right? Which is beautiful. Like, I think this would be a fabulous quilt just like this. But having that contrast, like throwing this right in there, you know what I mean? Or throwing like a bright blue in there, then all of a sudden these even are more faded. You know what I mean? Like the contrast between this and these bright things even call out how neutral this is. Do you kind of get what I'm saying here? It makes the neutrality of this, the lightness, the airiness of this even more important because it's contrasting to something that's the opposite, something that's really bright. So yeah, we take that away again. It's a lovely, lovely neutral quilt, but throw in some contrast and it's going to be calling out a little bit more. But see, here's the problem that I don't want to have happen. I don't want the quilt to be taken over by these brights. Like if I put all these brights together, now it's all of a sudden kind of a bright quilt. It's kind of half brights, half neutrals. That's what I don't want to have to happen. I want these to end up being, you know, the little itty bitty sparks, you know, the little itty bitty sparks within the quilt. So that's what I'm going to need your help with, guys. I think once we get going on this quilt, you got to remind me, hey, remember, you didn't want to put all that bright stuff in just every once in a while. So that's going to be a challenge for me because I know once we get started, I'm going to want to use these a lot because they're colorful and fun and they're more comfortable for me because I usually use, like I've been using all these saturated colors. But this is what I'm going for. I'm going for neutral and then teeny pops. So like only every 5 blocks or something I should be able to use this and only in a teeny amount. You know, and then we have the teeny amounts kind of mimicked in some of these prints too. Oh gosh, look at that guy, he's cute. So yeah, that's my plan and that's my thinking. You think I'll need a greater variety of neutrals? Yeah, so I don't have a lot of lights to darks. So I'm kind of trusting that I have the white backgrounds. So like, let's make a pretend block here. So with the white backgrounds, I don't need as much variety, I don't think, because the white is automatically going to be the lightest of the light. So everything is either a medium or a dark. And it, you know, obviously something's not very dark, but it's all in relationship to each other. So like if I put, you know, if I'm putting this on top, well, that's awfully light, but like, you know, so this is light. This is always going to be my light, the white. And then a medium, everything else is going to be either a medium or slightly darker. So, you know, this is obviously darker than the white, so this can be a medium. And then, you know, like this one, it's subtle. It's super subtle, but this is darker. This feels darker than this. So in theory, right now, I have a block that's a light, a medium, and a dark. It's super duper subtle, like it's way more subtle than going like this. Light, medium, dark, but it's there. If this is going to be in a block, you know, a 6-inch block, like this is almost a 6-inch block here. It's still, like, let's say this is the finished design, right? You still get it. You still get lights, medium, dark within that little block. So it does look like I don't have like a lot of darks here. But when you are talking within a teeny square, like even that, this is a dark now, light, medium, dark. Like if you squint at it, this is going to appear dark. Although when you just look at it, it's like, well, clearly that's a light color, right? That's a light, but not in relationship to these other things that are lighter. So yeah, it's Nolene, that's a good way of thinking about it. It's almost like I'm making white on white prints. So it's going to be very pale, except for our itsy bitsy teeny pops of color every once in a while. So that's the plan, a pale quilt, a pale low contrast quilt, because it's a whole lot different than the quilts I have been making. So that's kind of like a preview of what my plan is. I just picked these all out today. So I may change my mind, but I think I like where this is going. So these kind of neutrals, I only had, all my neutrals were kind of yellow based, so I just kind of went with it. Yeah, some of the blocks have 5 or more fabrics, but I think we'll be able to make it work. And you know, I always have some of these bright colors that can pop in there and help out too. I do have a few darker ones, but I was hoping to maybe get by without those. But I do have them in my head as a backup if I do need a darker neutral. I have like 1 or 2 darker neutrals. Yep, I'm gonna have to get, I'm for sure gonna have to get Blair's Ruby ruler out too to help find the contrast in the different values. But just wanted to share with you guys. I think that's my plan. A nice kind of yellowy, warm, pale thing with the pops of confetti pops of these teals and kind of coral pinks, which I'm still loving the coral pink colors. And this is almost like an inspiration here because this is pale. It's got a lot of those yellows, which is happening a lot. And then we got, you know, the background has some of that coral in, and then this teeny pops of blue. So this is kind of a really good, kind of a good inspiration piece for it. But yeah, so I think that's my Splendid Sampler 2 right here. But again, basically a lot of white background. So we got to remember that it's mostly going to be white within all these yellows. So, all right, guys, I'm going to flip you around and we will call it a weekend here. There, I just, you know, you got a glimpse of the Splendid Sampler and stuff again, and the charming chevrons on the table here. Completely different vibe, I think. Those are just so bright, and that's why I wanted to try just something different. You know, my last few quilts have been those bright quilts, and it's like, maybe that's getting in my comfort zone a little bit. Time to break out of that. So that's why I'm trying to challenge myself with these neutrals. I think it's going to be fun, but like I said, I'm going to need help staying away from those pops of color. Like every 5 blocks or something, I'm allowed to use it, just because, you know, I don't want those to start taking over the quilt, which it can easily, because, you know, there's 100 blocks. If there's pops of color in every block, then it's not a surprise throughout the quilt, right? So I need to be watching that while I try and stick to these neutrals. But that's the plan. So anyway, thanks for hanging out with me tonight while I embroider that label. That is going to take some time yet, that label. But maybe we'll keep stitching over the next few days and see how it goes. But I'm stoked for it. I think it's going to be a fun way of doing it, and just one long like tape of of a label. I think it's kind of silly, but I think it goes with the back of my quilt, which is all it's all improv pieced anyway. So I think it'll just match. I'm excited. But all right, guys, I will get this up on YouTube at Penguin and Fish Movies, and soon we'll be talking more about the Splendid Sampler too, and I still do want to do that sketchbook project. So I just got to get organized for you guys, and we'll be doing some new stuff coming up, and also quilting the charming chevrons. So have a great weekend, guys, and I will see you again on Monday. Good night.